to episode 28. Is that right?
Yeah, except we aren't going to really say that, are we?
We don't have to, but we can. We don't.
I mean, they know it's 28.
Yeah, that is true. Welcome to the PowersShift podcast.
Yeah.
This is your host, Jay and Hilary.
That's one person.
Jillery.
Jilary.
Hey.
Our sense of humor is only funny to us, as you've told us many times.
Yep. Our rating for humor is actually in the negatives.
I.e., you're not funny.
And this tea is actually a lemon something tea, a lemon zinger with ginger root.
With leaves from the backyard floating in it.
Pretty much.
And it looks like some zucchini squash or yellow squash floating around.
Yeah, have you ever had those savory teas?
No.
They're pretty good.
It's called broth. That's what it is.
But they make teas in packets that are
some
now
millennial shiznit.
probably
Hey, this is, what's it called? What'd you just call it?
savory tea.
Savory tea, commonly known as bouillon or broth. That's what it was called for thousands of years. Why did you change it?
It's called marketing, Dad.
Our brand was we do savory teas, i.e. broths or troughs. One of our friends was doing a wedding, and he says, and here do I give thee my trough. And everybody's going, what did you just say?
Yeah, it was in
How do you even say that word?
trough.
And then Rachel said it's trough, like trough, but with a TH.
All right, boomer, let's go.
It could go so sideways in a second.
I know. Well, so welcome to the show. Wherever you're tuning in from, we're glad you're here. We're glad you're here, and my dad might say otherwise, but I am glad you're here.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here too.
And we're doing it. We are continuing this whole shenanigans.
We've had 2 hours of sleep amongst the both of us. No.
I was up at 3:33 though today.
If you don't stop swallowing like that, I'm going to throw that savory tea out the window.
It's not. This is actually not
looks
savory tea.
It looks like paper. What's in that?
That's the tea packet.
Oh.
Dad. What do you think it is? Do you want to try some? Just try it. It's not that bad. It's actually
That
really
doesn't
tasty.
give me any comfort. It's not that bad.
It's not bad at all, actually. It's good.
It's not bad. It needs a lot of sugar and some cream in it.
Yep. America.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, so today, on today's episode, we're just going to talk.
Really?
That is all we're going to do. Yeah, I think for...
That's the problem. Don't think. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I think with this episode, though, we're not going to really know what we're going to title it until after the fact, which is usually not what they say to do in Podcast 101, but here we are.
Mm-hmm.
I also think there's something cool about conversations that just, what?
There's something cool about random confusion and lack of continuity.
Or planning.
Right. That's what we model. No.
No, but just seeing where the conversation takes us and allowing the present moment and spontaneity to be our guide.
Some of the best coaching conversations happen in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned that over time is, you have all this planning, you set up a meeting, you're going to do coaching and work really hard and you do okay, but then you go to the cafeteria and you sit down and you're just sitting around talking at lunch, and then real issues come out and real coaching can happen. So,
Well, with my coach, it always starts out with me, I bring a topic that I want to discuss, and it's typically some surface level business thing that I'm struggling with, and it almost always ends up with me like, sobbing, crying about something way deep,
Mhm.
and not something I was expecting to get into. But it's cool
Right.
to see, and I've talked with my coach about this. Like he's always appreciative that we both create the space to go there, and uh, that requires a level of trust and vulnerability, and I guess just openness to go there. So we end up going there, man, and I'll end up talking about some deep childhood wound,
Mhm.
and then figuring out for me, it's like connecting the dots of how that applies to struggling with whatever business thing I have. So it's just
Right.
interesting how it's usually a deeper, a deeper thing.
Yeah. I know Billy. He's your coach,
Hmm.
and yeah, he's good at getting to the heart of things.
Yeah.
But it's a two-way conversation. It's we expect to go get somebody. I think often we expect for to go somewhere, therapy or whatever, and that person's going to fix us. But I don't believe in quick fixes. Sometimes you can get to a conclusion quickly, but most of the time it's having to slow down, create that safe space, build relationship, build trust.
And I don't think it's actually about fixing.
It's
I
not
think it's
about it at
about
all.
discovery and um,
Right.
a lot of other things. But
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like with the world that we live in, y- you know, whether it's the standard of beauty or the rat race, it seems like we always start at a place of less than, and what do we need to buy, or what do we need to grab hold of to make us, i.e., better or more of something.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what's been on your mind the last week or so? What have you been thinking about?
I think it's a lot of. I mean, there's a lot going on. KK Matt just got here last night, and
Mm-hmm.
so that feels everything is starting to feel more real in terms of this thing we've been talking about for several months,
Yeah. So, Kirsten is your twin sister.
right?
Matt is her husband.
Yeah,
They just did a 30-hour move, so a page turned in their life literally, and today is their second anniversary.
yeah,
And they have a vision for the future. They have a child on the way, and in family, that's their life, but it's also part of our life. And so, a
yeah.
literal, a literal, metaphorical, spiritual page has turned, but is turning. It's happening right in front of us.
It's like a slow. It's
Yeah,
like you're seeing it. Like,
it's weird because as a parent, I can see those pages turning, and it's fun to watch it. It's in you and Jordan, um, in Haley, even Haley too, and the grandkids, even Marley and Hayden. So people that are listening don't know that, but that's our family, and just a lot going on. We have
yeah,
we have a we are creating a vision, a family vision, and under that, within that family vision, individual visions, and how that all ties together. And it's exciting to me.
yeah. It's neat to see the collaboration and the dreaming and uh, the support too, because we meet as a family at least once a month via Zoom,
Hmm.
and we are just checking in with where we're at in life. We're encouraging each other, supporting each other. Because that requires when this kind of change is happening, or you're starting to really make decisions specifically about a future goal or a vision or dream,
Hmm.
you're often met with some sort of resistance and or some sort of challenge because it's that's what change is. And so how do we navigate that? And then it's to have people to go through that with you, I think is a really
Hmm.
beautiful thing. And a necessary thing.
Yeah, it's very messy. I mean, in a good way, it's wonderful, but it is messy because what we're finding out as a family is we love each other. That's foundational. It's not about loving each other because we do, but we're having to align. We have a vision of being within proximity to each other, literally land and some things like that. But um, we're also starting to see where we don't align.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes families never get to that place where they can safely and honestly disagree. It's either polarized with fighting and verbal violence and silence on one side, of that interaction, and then nothing,
Mm-hmm.
and
Where
there's,
you like don't talk at all,
yeah, and
or there's an air of, it's almost like everything kind of gets brushed under the rug, and no one wants to step on each other's
right,
toes. So it's this level of
we're lying basically.
inauthenticity.
Yes, you can call it whatever, and
Yeah.
it is that, but it's just at the end of the day, if you don't disagree as people, I think somebody's not being honest. It doesn't mean you don't figure it out, and the whole point is you disagree and you figure out how to come to some sort of um, ability to work it out,
Yeah.
and we're having to do that
Well,
with.
do you have an example of something that either you and I aren't aligning on, or just what, when you say
Yeah,
that, what does that look like actually?
well, I think this is a kind of a superficial. Right now it's superficial, but it's just one of the things we're deciding as a family. Mom and I have said, okay, we're in our 60s now. In fact, tomorrow, what is, no, in two
Two
days,
days.
2 days, I'll be 69 years old, which is very weird.
Yeah.
Um, at our age, mom is 66. The family's going, we want to be closer together. We spent our whole lives after you guys left high school
Yeah.
being separated geographically. We've always been a close family. We talk to each other almost every day, which is a blessing to me. Um, but
But also it wasn't always
it
like
wasn't.
that.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
I think we all needed, I mean, maybe I'm going off chasing whatever, but I think we all needed that space to really define or redefine who we are. And,
yeah,
you get put in these roles and these dynamics as a family member, and then you're off on your own. If you get that chance to just go off and be completely on your own, and you really you discover your own identity,
yeah.
not based on your last name, which is
Well, if you raise
interesting.
your kids right and you do a responsible job, and they don't have limitations such as, mental health or, intellectually, things like that. If you raise your kids right, they should leave.
Hmm.
You're raising them up so that they can start their own families. But we've come to the point where we've been so separated geographically that as you guys have gotten older, so all of you are in your mid 30s to early 40s now, you guys have decided we don't want to be separated anymore if we don't have to be.
Hmm.
So for work or whatever. And so I'm trying to get to a point here, but is we've said, okay, well, you guys figure out where it is you want to live. And so that opened up this whole thing of, well, I want to live in Arkansas. I want to live in North Carolina or Florida or wherever. And so we're not aligned with where you guys want to live, but you have to state your case for each place, and we don't always agree on what the most important things are. And so you have to have we're still working on this. You have to be able to say what you feel, and a lot of times we don't even know how we feel. So it's figuring out what we feel and then
Hmm.
talking through that, disagreeing with it, and at the end of the day, it doesn't divide us, it brings us together.
Well, yeah, giving each other the space and creating the environment where we feel safe enough to say how we feel, where we're not going to get beat up, even if it's going to
Right.
hurt feelings, or even if it's going to cause a disruption like that. That's something that we all have to come to the table with, with an understanding, a mutual understanding that, like, okay. And I think that that's something our family, for somehow, maybe it's what y'all instilled in us, but I think all the stuff that we've been through as a family, everything from death to almost divorce to um, just trauma,
Mm-hmm.
me and my sexuality, Haley, getting pregnant so young, addiction, all the things, the health issues, all of that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Like, no matter what, even when there was points where I knew that I was drifting from y'all. Like, at the end of the day, we've always been like, well, we're a family, and no
Yeah.
matter what, like, no matter how messed up it is, like, we have each other's back as much, and that means like being on completely opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of beliefs and viewpoints on
Yeah.
certain things, and that's really that's hard to navigate. But I feel like also that space, in a way, gave us breathing room
Yeah, and I
to.
think Mom and I matured is, in people who know us know that our relationship with God, with the Trinity, with the creator of the universe is fundamental and foundational to, and we're on a journey here of everything we say and do and who we are.
Well, and that's changed so much for y'all. I mean, we've
And
seen
for
it.
y'all,
Yeah, all of
I
us.
mean,
I
that's the
mean,
thing I'm seeing is sometimes we just take it for granted, I think, but we love each other. Um, Part of what we're seeing is this is a journey, and we feel called as a family, but also as individuals, and us, Mom and I, getting out of the way so that you guys can figure out what that is as individuals
hmm
for you.
yeah. And
Um,
just like, what does something for me that a theme that I see happening this year for me is like really being curious about the things, my priorities, my values, and how does that actually align in my day to day life? Like, if I say I love family and I say that that's important, what does that actually tangibly look like?
hmm
What?
Putty Putman says, "We be living what we be leaving."
Mm-hmm.
We, what you can say this, but how you live your life is what you really believe.
Mm-hmm.
And what I see happening with us as a family is those things are starting to align.
Yeah.
Um, Mom and I are doing some prep work for becoming part of a group called the Order of the Mustard Seed, and you're kind of starting that journey too. But the fundamentals of that are, and I won't go into all of it, but really is having a rule of life. And I think, for me, it's be true to Christ, be kind to everyone I meet, and take the good news with me as I go. And affirm, validate, encourage, challenge, and support whoever I meet. And okay, easy to say, looks good on paper, sounds cool, but how do I actually live that out?
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm learning is, shoot, forget about loving your enemies sometimes. How about loving people that are your family or your friends or your
Yeah.
people that you interact with every day? And what about loving yourself in a
Yeah.
healthy way?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so my question to you then, as the patriarch of our family and that role that you're in,
I
what?
just had a picture of Don Corleone. I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse. What that sounded like. Never mind.
Uh,
Yeah, so what's the question?
so as the patriarch, like, what do you feel like your role is right now in this season of life for our family? And what do you, so that's the first part of the question. I have a second part, but answer that first.
So ask it again.
As the patriarch, what is your role right now for our family? Or
Um,
what do you hope your role is, I guess?
to Matt and I were talking over breakfast this morning, and it's becoming clearer, but I see it as modeling behavior that we want to see as a family. So I can't give away something that I don't have.
Mm-hmm.
So modeling behaviors and practices that I want to see, and and as importantly, I always think of looking outward outside of my family when I talk about my calling.
Mm-hmm.
But I think my role is to to seek God, and I'm not being religious here. I'm talking about really relationally seek God. But then in that context, it's validating, affirming, encouraging you guys, challenging you, and supporting you. Um, like for example, one of you kids, in your relationships, hey, are you sure that's a healthy relationship? I'm not telling you how to live your life, but have you thought about this? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and this is a challenge for me because I really have an opinion about almost everything.
Right. Yeah.
Challenging, challenging you guys without giving you advice you didn't ask for, but really just validating you.
Yeah. Well, that's hard
Does that
because,
answer the question?
yeah, I think so. I think that's hard because to, I think there's a humbling that has to happen, had to happen for me when I was genuinely asking for advice, especially from people who I knew would give me the truth that maybe I didn't want to hear,
Mm-hmm.
or show me perspective that they weren't just stroking my ego, or just blowing smoke, but they actually would say you know the truth in that, and that can be hard. I find myself even right now with my journey, my walk with God day to day. There are certain things that I maybe don't even have the wherewithal to be like, well, I don't know if I want to know the answer, or your perspective, or you might tell me something I don't want to hear, so I might dance around it, or avoid it, or
Yeah,
do whatever, or go to someone who I know is going to tell me what I want to hear.
tickle your ears.
Yeah, and so again, that's the awareness, but I think coming back to family, this just seems like it might be a natural topic, because I think a lot of people right now are in places with their family. I mean, everyone's all over the place. You have, I know I have friends who are completely estranged from their family, or family, friends who's their family. They just it's constant struggle, and toxic, and
Not safe.
yeah. I mean, I was going to say abusive, and so this whole role and importance of family and the family unit, like what does that even mean to, like, living your life in a way that is fulfilling? Like, how does family, like, does that make sense? Like, I
Well,
don't even know what I'm trying to ask,
it's
but
like we were not. You and I, we have a belief system that we believe we were created to be in family. Um, whether it's the nucleus family or the ripple it out.
yeah.
You know, um,
I mean, for instance, spent little more than a decade away from y'all. So where I would live geographically, I would create family, whether that was
mhm.
through people, work friends, neighbors. But I think that's a natural response to living, is like, people want to be in community, but but a lot of people don't either. I mean,
Yeah.
we've all gone through COVID, where it showed the isolation, and
Scientifically, the isolation, just from the research, was pretty catastrophic for many
yeah,
people.
yeah. But how does family play a role, especially when it's a family that may not be serving you and your growth, or like they're on the journey with you? Like, I guess, is that a
Well,
place where you can then learn to practice what it is you're learning? I don't know, like.
I think it's an and.
Mhm.
Ancient Hebrew scripture, and I don't have the reference, but it's I'm paraphrasing here, but it says God sets the solitary in family. We weren't meant to be isolated. but there are seasons where isolation is beneficial in that you're either learning something and you have to do it on your own, or
But let's get into that belief system though. Like, why? Like, why is family? Why do you believe that we were meant to be in family? Not just because. I mean, is it because you read it in scripture, or what examples, like experiences that you have day to day, like I guess show
well, a
you
lot of it's
that?
feeling. When I was in the Navy, um, we would go on cruises. They weren't the kind you're thinking of. We would go do war games and flight ops, and we were on an aircraft carrier out in the middle of the North Atlantic in winter, and you'd be isolated for 6 months, and it does something to you. Um, I just think, I think we are better off. I'm trying to. It's hard to articulate it. It really is
Right,
hard, but
it is.
I never felt better in isolation for long periods of time.
Mm-hmm.
My family was jacked up in terms of alcoholism. On my mom's side, there was a lot of dysfunction, but in spite of that pain, we laughed a lot. We looked forward to being together. There's 10 of us cousins that are the offspring of my mother's siblings, and we would get together way more often than we do if we could. There's something about that blood, in a family that loves each other, that it's indescribable, really.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting thinking of it too. Just as you were saying that, we have this Americanized Western viewpoint where it's hyper independent.
Yeah.
And when I lived overseas, I mean, Thailand is the exact
Mm-hmm.
opposite, where it's so communal, almost to the
Mm.
point where people are struggling to find their identity and
Right.
their individualism in that way. But for them, they don't move out. The kids don't move out at 18. Like
Yeah.
they have compounds and they've lived there for generations, and so you have great grandparents and aunts and
Yeah.
uncles all under one
Look at people
compound.
groups. When we lived in Pittsburgh, there would be whole streets where families lived on the same street, and in some of those cases, entire extended families would live in the same house.
Hmm.
So it's like we don't even have to try to congregate like that. I think it's innate in us to want
Right.
to be in relationship. It's really about those relationships. That's the thing.
Yeah, and to whether it's by blood or not, I think to have people in your life that when life when things go awry, that like who are you gonna call on? Like the people. Like I think that was a big thing, a wake up call for me in Denver when I was really deep in the community there. Like I mean, and this is different from my close friends. My close friends who actually knew you know, my background and my middle name and
Mm-hmm.
my family, some of my family stuff. I'm talking about just the community where you go out and you see the same people and all these people by proximity and by bar.
Mm-hmm.
But I just remember getting to this point. It's like if my life, if something really horrible happened to me, who of these people that I see day in and day out would I actually call?
Yeah.
And that number was very, very, very small you know,
Mm-hmm.
when especially in the world of social media where you have X amount of friends on IG or Facebook or whatever, it's like, okay, but in this real life,
Yeah.
like who would I actually call? I think it's like, there's something that I feel very blessed about, like, especially with our family, even though we've gone through so much stuff together, like, I think it's pretty miraculous. And maybe that's a testament of the glory of God and
Grace. Yeah.
his grace on our family, that we've been able to still be in each other's lives and remain not only like civil but like that we like each other,
Yeah.
because that's I'm thinking of like all the things that have happened in our life. There are plenty of reasons where a lot of us could be like, nope, never talking to this family again. And so it's just like, what is it that like drives people or us to stay? Like, what is it? Or like your lifelong friends, Darby, her and I had such a fun conversation yesterday, but it's like she's one of those lifers where it's like no matter what, there's nothing ever that she could do that would make me not love her and
Right.
that would take that away, or like literally nothing. And so
Yeah.
it's just like there's something very special about that. Like I guess like you said, it's just like human relationship. And like you said then too, it's messy and we're all growing constantly. And
Right, and I was thinking as you were saying that, that's us. We have worked hard to create a family dynamic that is protective and inclusive and safe. Like in our family, we have Jordan on one end, who's a nurturer, very very sensitive. We have Mom and Kirsten, who are creatives. We have you and I, who are connectors, and then we have Haley, who's a guardian. So we've got all these
and
different voices.
and that's part of is that something you actually break down in your coaching?
Yeah, when I'm
is the
coaching
five.
people, it's from a company called Giant, and it's called the Five Voices Survey. And basically, it's easy to remember and break it down, and it's not real complicated based on Myers Briggs stuff. But what we learned in that family setting, so what I'm saying is we have grown even in the last 5 years,
Yeah.
just in how we conduct ourselves as a family internally when nobody sees it. And one of the things we did was, you and I are the most vocal. Then you've got Mom and KK that are kind of in there. Haley can be, but usually isn't, surprisingly. She's got very opinionated, very strong, but doesn't say much. And then you've got Jordan, who, as he's gone through therapy, just in counseling and things like that, it's come out to us, and we've all gone through therapy as a family, but it's come out through our conversations that he never felt heard
Right.
as a child because he didn't cause any trouble. He was always level, even keeled, and he wasn't heard. Not because it was malicious, because we were loud and we didn't pay attention and we weren't aware.
Yeah.
Well, now we have awareness. So when we have our family meetings, Jordan goes first.
Right.
So we make sure that he gets heard. It's familial rules of engagement. The talkers and the loud people and the ones that are connectors, we go last.
Right.
And we give everybody a voice. Mom is finding her voice. She was the middle child.
The invisible child.
Yeah, and had Linda, who was the eldest and very strong and capable, and even sometimes your mom looked at her like her second mother.
Right.
Well, Linda had made all the decisions and stuff like that, not because Linda was a bad person. She wasn't. She was protecting her sister. But then Mom didn't feel like she had a voice sometimes. Well, now Linda and her have worked that out, and Linda has made space for Mom. But also in our family, Mom is finding her voice. I mean, she's married to me, and it was really hard, and I can be very overpowering sometimes. Well, the growth opportunity is for her to find her voice, and my growth opportunity is to shut up.
Right.
Right. And be quiet.
But that's taken y'all how long to learn? You have been married for 42 years.
It's taken a long time.
Well, I think it's so much of like when I think of growth and, the arduous task of like learning about who you are, so much of that is having to let go yourself. Like of me had to let go of past me, let go of past you. Like
our hurts and wounds.
I mean, you it's so easy to hold on to those things, or when you're trying something new. Like for me, finding my voice, or right now where I'm at is learning to say no.
Yeah.
And that can be, in any relationship, that can be really, when someone's doing something new and you're used to the last 10 plus years of them being one way, it's hard for everybody because you're in real time having to transition. Like I remember when I started speaking up about, just in general about things, like there was a few people in my life where that just, it was hard. They didn't like that all of a sudden I had a lot to say, or an opinion, or not even that, but just that I was willing to speak up in challenge or whatever it was. And that's that this week, like that has come up for me of
Well, it's
my
listening, right?
yeah, and my inability to say no. So that's actually something. This might be. I'm just going to share it. So if anyone wants to glean from this and try it yourselves, go for it. But it came up in my coaching call where with just my inability to say no, and I don't want to say inability because I can sometimes, but in a lot of situations I struggle with actually just being able to say no and turn around and walk away. Not even like, I feel like I have to explain myself, or
Apologize.
yeah. And a lot of it's like learning, okay, that I I care about how I'm perceived. And so for somewhere along my life journey, I got it in my head that by was saying no to someone was denying them. It was some sort of like,
Fear of rejection, maybe.
offense. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, like, so my fear of them leaving or not liking me because of my saying no. So something my coach Billy, is having me try is like, I'm going to write a bunch of questions down and give them to y'all. And then throughout the day, have y'all just ask them to me. And all I can do is say no and walk
Right.
away. And so actually physically practice it in my body. And that's what I've realized, like, so much of is in here, like for me in here, it's learning how to feel it in the somatic. We talk about this, like in my body. And so what is, like, I have a visceral response when I hear the word no, even if someone else is saying it to another person. I literally feel it in my body. So there's cells in my body that have memory, all of them do, but they're storing that trauma of years of that buildup of not being able to say no. And so getting to practice that, like, Rachel was talking about when she did a self-defense class, like their teacher made them scream no. And they're like, why do we have to be so dramatic? He's like, the body remembers, like the body remembers the training. When you're out in the real world, and if you're just like in training, you're like, no big deal. Like, it's politely, like, your body doesn't remember that. So he would have all of them would have to scream, no, like
Yeah.
super loud and over and over and over again until you created the memory. So it's
And the
just,
feeling.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Can I read this?
No.
Okay. I will. Above all, trust in the slow work of God. We are quite naturally impatient in everything to reach the end without delay. We should like to skip the intermediate stages. We are impatient of being on the way to something unknown, something new, and yet it is the law of all progress that it is made by passing through some stages of instability, and that it may take a very long time. And so I think it is with you. Your ideas mature gradually. Let them grow. Let them shape themselves without undue haste. Don't try to force them on as though you could be today what time, that is to say, grace and circumstances acting on your own goodwill, will make of you tomorrow. Only God could say what this new spirit gradually forming within you will be. Give our Lord the benefit of believing that his hand is leading you, and accept the anxiety of feeling yourself in suspense and incomplete. That's by Pierre Teilhard de Chardin.
It's one of my favorites. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, and I think when I read that 5 years ago, or maybe longer now, that was a thing about awareness that we're on a journey. It's not about getting to the end quickly and, okay, we, as an American, we made progress. We got it done. The whole get her done thing.
Right.
It's
Right.
about it's about being on the journey, being in the moments, growing in awareness. I think some of the things that make it hard for you to say no, and the growing in that area is part of your gifting as a connector and a relational person. That's what makes you attractive to people, is that same open spirit that
Mm-hmm.
says yes to people. So it's
Mm-hmm.
learning how to
Mm-hmm.
balance that, and it's learning how to have discernment and awareness about what you should say no to and what you should say yes to.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think, yeah, I think that's a good point. Like a lot of the things that in life that we struggle with can be our greatest gifts.
Mm-hmm.
The very things that we drag us down or whatever,
Yeah.
cause us the most uh, strain, and so then it would be having the right tools and support to be able to recognize that and then learn how to cultivate and grow those gifts, like you said, like that poem says.
Yeah. I met this guy who created the core values assessment when I was coaching, and I got to talk to the guy that actually created it.
Mm.
He's an older guy, and he said, "Jay, you're really, really good at shooting for them from the hip. So you can walk up to anybody, start a conversation, flow, flex, whatever." And he goes, "That's probably a sign that you probably shouldn't do that as much as you do it."
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Because it's so easy.
Yeah.
Maybe you shouldn't do that. Maybe you should stop and think and
That's man.
listen.
So you and I are so much freaking alike
Yeah.
because that's where I've tended to, because I think I see, I'm like you said, I'm that open kind of yes person, and I see the good in people. Just
Hmm.
because of that doesn't mean I have to open myself up to everybody. And I've
Right.
gotten myself in a lot of pickles that way, where sometimes it's taken one of my friends or KK. KK and I are pretty polar opposites.
People that don't know you're twins.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm more the extrovert. She's more the introvert. I'm light. She's dark. All the things. And that has ebbed and flowed and changed a lot in our lives. But there's
Hmm.
some common threads throughout all that. But oftentimes it would take KK kind of coming in to the picture to almost give me a
Kicking my
dose,
butt.
yeah, a dose, like a wake up call or a reality check, because I can just get, again, that's where I'm learning the whole thing of being able to say no. It's like, okay, boundaries, physical boundaries, spiritual boundaries,
Hmm.
all of it, and
Well,
it's,
we teach people to not to say yes. We don't. It's changed over time because of sexual abuse and things like that. It kind of ebbs and flows, but is we didn't tell people it was okay to say no,
yeah,
and then we went through this whole thing is don't ever talk to any strangers. It's like that. And, don't ever open yourself up, and so we live these. I don't know if Thoreau said it, but we live these lives of quiet desperation where we're isolated and we don't open up. And so that's a whole other
mm-hmm,
subject. But another thing we've learned as a family a lot, we're in, it's real time learning, is becoming better listeners.
mm-hmm,
Um, Not just listening to respond, in fact, listen to understand and just to listen without having a response.
mm-hmm,
Paul Zoll, who wrote Peace in the Third Phase of Life, said most people spend their lives never actually being listened to.
mm-hmm.
In fact, we did a podcast where we did a exercise. Remember that?
Yeah, yeah,
But learning how to listen, me being aware that Jordan has felt not heard. So now when I'm with Jordan and we're one on one, I try to make it a point to really just be in the moment. Another word we're hearing is be present. In fact, Matthew was talking
Right.
about it this morning. Is one of our goals is just to be present
Mm-hmm.
without an agenda.
Right.
Americans think they got to have an agenda and a program. I know I'm making a blanket statement.
Right. But yeah, I mean, how often I think all of us can, reflect on just like yesterday and see where, we weren't present. I remember early, I don't know, this is maybe in Denver era. I forget who it was. Maybe it was Eckhart Tolle. Uh, just talks about like with any task at hand, like when you're washing the dishes, try to only wash the dishes.
Mm-hmm.
That's really hard to do. To just focus on the dish and put all of your energy and your mind and your thoughts and awareness on that. And when you have those moments of practicing presence, which we've talked about this before too, the present moment is the only quote unquote time that touches eternity.
Yeah.
That's the only
Explain that a little bit.
well when you're in the present moment versus the past, or if you're thinking about the past all the time, it pulls you out of the now, and you're thinking of this world that has already been created, yet you're recreating it every time you're thinking about it. So it just sends you on this,
Mm-hmm.
chase. Whereas the future, which isn't always bad to reflect, and isn't bad
To remember.
yeah, and it isn't bad to plan. That's not what I'm saying either. But when we get caught up in, people call it future tripping. One of my relationships, I learned afterwards when we broke up that most of our relationship was built on the future. We future tripped our whole. It was all about what we would do one day and how our life would look one day. And so it pulled us out of the present moment. And in the present moment, if we were paying attention and in the now, you get out of time and space. So then
Yeah.
you're able to be, to me, that's when you're able to closely walk with God, is in
Mm-hmm.
that present moment. You're getting a snapshot. I mean, I've had experiences with God and or life where for literally 1 second, I was so present, but it felt like it did feel like eternity. It
Mm-hmm.
felt like even just, last Sunday, there was a timelessness about that service when we were just fully allowing ourselves to be in the presence of God and be in the
Yeah.
present moment. And it does something to you.
Sometimes I think Christians, I'm differentiating between followers of Jesus and Christians. Maybe I shouldn't, but we're always looking to when we all go to heaven.
Yeah.
And what I'm learning is to me that's an inevitability if you believe in the Trinity and you believe in uh, Father, Son, Jesus, the Father, and the Holy Spirit. It, if you live that life, that's an inevitable thing that will happen.
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing now? How are we living our life now?
Mm-hmm.
Jesus said, "Pray this way," and he said, among other things, "May your kingdom come, may your will be done on earth like it's already being done in heaven." So how are we? Like with our families? How are we living now, presently? Living at peace with all men, loving our neighbor like we love ourselves, loving God, being at peace,
Mm-hmm.
finding joy in just being fully human being as God created us to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think what, that makes me think of, I forget who said it, but everyone wants to go to heaven, no one wants to die.
Yeah.
We all want to resurrect, no one wants to be crucified. And I think that's where Christ shows me this dying to self. In order to bring heaven to earth, we have to let our egos crash and burn and
Yeah.
die. And the ego is not going to go down without a fight.
And even that whole idea is other people besides the way we believe as followers of Jesus. Other people are seeing that.
Oh yeah, I
The
mean
ego is
that was something I think before I fully, surrendered to following Christ, that's I think a big topic in the spiritual world,
which is ultimately humility. You
Yeah.
have to die to yourself. Um, like Bob Dylan said, you got to serve somebody, and
Yeah.
usually it's us. And so dying, you said this once. I don't know where you got it, but freedom isn't being able to do whatever you want to do. Freedom is actually being able to say no to yourself.
It's Rob Bell.
Rob Bell, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So all of that to say that in a family dynamic, it's about dying to yourself and then being all about you, and it's preferring other people, which is anathema. It's a curse word in our culture and society, because generally speaking, it's all about us. And that is the paradox. I've been saying it a lot lately.
Yeah.
It's not about you, but it is about you, because you control yourself and what you do and don't do.
Yeah.
And so it's looking at ways to serve rather than ways to be served.
Right.
And if everybody did that, we get all hung up and bitter at Christians. But if we stop looking at Christians as much, which we should be able to look at Christians and see Jesus. It's kind of like duh. But if we look at what Jesus taught, even if you didn't believe he was the Messiah, if you just did what he said, the world would be a different place. Him being the Messiah, him being the Savior, makes all the difference. But even if you didn't believe that, and I just thought of this as maybe it's really impossible to live how Jesus said without the power of the Holy Spirit in your life. But and that's true in families. I mean, Scripture says that the smallest representation of the body of Christ is the nucleus family. So if you can't do it there, what makes you think you can do it anywhere else?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's been, the families have been fractured.
Yeah, and everything from material items to people at this point it's disposable in our culture. So if you're not happy with anything, and that's in the world and in the secular world and the sacred world, which that's a whole other topic of even just those two worlds in and of themselves, because I don't know, it's getting into duality and all that stuff. But even then, I lost it. What were you saying?
Well, we were talking about
just that we can. I mean, if you disagree with somebody, you can be like, okay, I'm going to buy, like cancel, or I don't agree with that. What that coach said, so I'm going to go to this other gym over here. I don't. That pastor said this, so I'm going over here now. I'm not happy with this, and it's everything's. It's this to me. It's consumerism in the flesh.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, everything's disposable, and I can just create a new. I can create a new me too. I can create a new identity. I can create a new whatever. I don't need. Yeah. I mean, look at social media. So it's to be choosing actively, intentionally, and with your heart and mind and body and soul to choose to stay and to walk through that with people like that. That's commitment, and
takes courage,
and and commitment's hard. I mean, that's one thing that's kept me,
So saying no might start with saying no to ourselves. Bo and I is one of our pastors, and I love Bo. He and I adamantly disagree on stuff, but I love Bo, and we care about each other, and we can disagree like that and then go eat lunch together.
Yeah.
And but that takes time.
Yeah.
And that takes learning how to trust, and you should learn that in a family. But what I'm seeing with the generations is some people never get that. It was abusive or dismissive or neglectful or whatever. I mean, it's not everybody, but
Yeah.
even in healthy families, and this is something we could talk about later, is blind spots. You don't know what you don't know, and then somebody points it out, and you get your panties in a wad and run off and leave.
Well, we all, just take us, 6 of us, all had completely different experiences. We literally can all talk about the same event and have a completely different
True.
view of what happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that is actually, so that happened this week. I was like, just before bed, I couldn't sleep, and so I was praying, and I was actually reflecting on, so I think it's been 2 years this month, maybe, yeah, that I've been single. And on top of that, celibate. And that's an active choice, but it's having me, I've been thinking about, like, well, why? Like, what about, I don't want to just believe something or do something because that's what someone told me is right or whatever. So it's like, instead of seeking all this outside advice, it's like I've been really reflecting on, okay, like what is the reason for this period of fasting or celibacy? And that actually, so I was praying the other night, and it's crazy because it happened at 11:23, because I had to write it down afterwards, and I looked at what time it was. And that's for those of you,
numbers.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, that number 11:23, I've seen that on the clock sometimes twice a day for over 10 years. And it actually was the day, I didn't realize this till after either, that I was baptized on 1/1/23, January 1st, 2023. Yeah. But I heard a whisper, and it was like the clearest. I've only had a couple times in my life, like I've only heard the distinct, clear whisper. One was when I was visiting Washington State, and I heard a voice say, like, you'll be back, like you'll live here. And that was before I even ever thought of that. So that was wild. But a couple nights ago, I heard specifically, before I could even get the question out, was like, it was, if you can't say no to yourself, what makes you think you can say no to anybody else or to anything else? And this on surface level, I can say it's saying no to sex, but it's so much deeper than that.
Oh, yeah.
Like that is just that's one part of it. But the deeper I go into that, where it's just funny, because that is the thing I'm learning to say no, in all different areas, not just that. But this season I'm in right now, it's like, okay, I need to learn this. God is revealing this to me right now as training, and I have this opportunity. It's something that I've struggled with my whole life. So it's like I have an opportunity to go deeper into that. And so I really want to, that's where I'm at. It's like I really want to dive deep into, okay, why am I doing some of the things that I'm doing?
And I admire that in you. That's a friend of mine, Mark Field, says the true evidence of personal growth is when other people see it. And I can see that in you. I can see it in Kirsten and Matt. I can see it in Jordan and Haley and Mom. The growth that's happening in us right now is, and I think it's finally when you go, I'm going to say no to myself, to your point. It opens up this whole horizon of opportunity.
Yeah, it does.
It's the best way I can describe it. And I have I have a group of friends that we meet every Wednesday at 6. And we're experiencing the same thing. We're getting down to, we've been meeting together since 2018.
Wow.
And those relationships are some of the most vital and important relationships in my life. These guys know who they are. A couple of Johns and Marks and, Lawrence and Danny and some people like that, and Michael, that were, and Joe. I want to make sure I get them all. Doug, that group of guys, small group, but like today, this morning, we had a disagreement, fundamental disagreement. But we'll walk away. We love each other. We hold each other accountable. We encourage each other. It's really a choice. You don't have to do it. That's the thing. It's a matter of our will and our choice. and embracing the mess. To me,
Yeah.
it's just you have to embrace it.
Well, you say this a lot, and I like it. It's like, yes, like that is a burden. Like family is a burden, but we often look at burdens as bad things, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they are. Like it is burdensome to, you know, live amongst a family and all in one house. Like of course, like why wouldn't that be burdensome? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that's okay. And how do you then navigate that? Again, you have to set clear boundaries. You have to speak up. You have to know yourself. You know.
Jesus said, "My burden is light."
Mm-hmm.
I'm going, well, it doesn't feel light. Yeah, that's because you don't get it. You don't understand what I'm saying. So, as we've grown in our spiritual relationships, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's messy. Yes, it's expensive. Um,
Well, there's a cost, but like anything that has value, you know, like there's a cost, and I'm not talking about money here. You know, it's like, you know, I think of
money's only
time.
one a facet of it.
Yeah, I think of time. I think of your energy. Like that's what's so fascinating being in the art world too, is people are expressing themselves like, you know, on a soul level, and it's weird to me that we attach money to it, and I don't. That's a whole other
Yeah.
conversation, but yeah, it's weird to think of money as a spiritual exchange, and how we view it in a worldly way, and then how can we use that
Well,
in a
Uncle
different
Collie,
way? Mm-hmm.
one of his gifts is investing and making money and investing not only the money part, but it's investing in people, and it's a gift he has,
Right.
and he knows how to steward. He talks about stewardship a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not just the money part; it's time, it's relationships, it's all that stuff.
Right. Well, I I guess we could go on and on and on as always, but maybe some takeaways. I mean, what do you think of the biggest takeaway is for you, just based on this conversation?
It sounds like a Carpenter's song. We've only just begun. The awareness light has come on, and it's encouraging to hear you talk about where you're growing. So I'm trying to come up with a takeaway. It really just is allow yourself. I want to more allow myself to be shown my blind spots, because my biggest fear in life, one of them is a stagnation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to stagnate. I want to always be growing, always be.
Do you feel like you've had periods though of stagnation
Oh yeah,
that were beneficial?
I think. Well, it's not. No, the word wouldn't be stagnation. It would be in those seasons of dormancy.
Oh yeah, we've talked about
We've
that.
talked about it,
Yeah.
like and we're coming up on. It's getting ready to be fall and winter. That is you have to have that for spring and summer.
Well, I think that's different. I think dormancy and the stagnation. I think what
Yeah.
you're saying is like the inability to grow.
Or
and,
the difference between stubbornness and determination. Stubbornness is not forward thinking. It's not forward moving. Being stubborn means you dig in and you've got to have your own way. Being determined is movement towards something else.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so for me, it's like, why do I have to have my own way? Why do I have to make a point to my kids, when really what I might need to do is say no to myself and just be a listener, become a more effective listener. So it's focusing. The takeaway is continue to be aware.
Yeah.
Let people speak into you, even if it's slightly painful.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
One of my friends, Duke Lancaster, said, "I don't want to be your project." Blind spot. I didn't even know I was making him my project. But he was right. So I had to back off of that.
Yeah.
You guys have said it
Right.
to me is, I don't want you to coach me. I just want you to love
Just like,
me, be
you
my
just need a
dad.
dad right now versus
Right.
a coach.
How
Yeah.
about you?
Biggest takeaway? Um, I think I'm gonna quote my girl Darbs, and just because it's on my heart right now, and we talked about it last night, is just to show up.
Presence. That's my word, not yours. What is your word?
Just to show up.
What
Like,
does that mean?
I think that means to show whatever life is presenting to you, in whatever family dynamic you're in, whether you're completely estranged or you have a great relationship, or there's things that you're wanting to talk to your family about but you're scared. Like, show up in it, show up in life, show up when you don't want to show up, going to the gym or doing the things that you know are right for you, saying no to the things right now for future yeses. That's hard for me to do. And so to show up in that, like, I can still show up even if I don't want to, and still, even if I don't want to, like, have a good attitude. But it's a choice, and the grace to, like, I can have the bad attitudes and I can let myself have those mopey times, but in all of it, like, showing up in that emotion. What does it mean to show up in anger? Allow myself to feel that anger. There's a reason for that, and don't avoid it. Because for me, I'd often, for 20 plus years, I learned to bottle the emotion of anger. I didn't know how to control it, and so it would pop off. I would pop off when I, and get belligerent when I was drunk, or it would come out in random things that the experience I was happening didn't match the emotion, where I'd be completely irate about something that, like, that this doesn't match. So there's an underlying thing here, and so for me it was learning how to be and show up in anger, how to show up in sadness.
All emotions, right?
Yeah, all of them.
Being mature.
So that's what I mean, and I think that can sum up a lot of what we talked about, is like, especially like with family. I think family is it's so close to people's hearts in so many ways, whether that's like where the most of your pain has come from and or most of your joy. Like, there's a reason why we were born out of a mother, you know what I mean?
Into something.
Yeah, there's reason for that, and I think our families can be our greatest teachers,
Oh, yeah.
and again, we can choose to shut that out or not.
And you can't help it. I mean, you can't. Murdoch's children. The guy that owns Fox News and that big media empire from Australia. His kids had no control over what family they were born into.
Yeah.
And it's same with all of us. They do have a choice on how they handle that as they become adults, though.
Right.
And I was thinking about them because they were all in the news. They can't get along. They're trying to figure out who's going to run the company when Murdoch passes away. And the kids are arguing about it.
Right.
And they're in court about it. So,
Yeah.
So it's like you can't help what family you're born into, but you can help how once you get up to a place of age and maturity on how you're going to handle that.
Yeah. And that's I think too is hard, because that might mean saying no to some family members and creating those boundaries of, like, this is not healthy for me, and I'm not going to go there and let you treat me this way.
Yeah.
And then that's on the other person for how, we're not responsible for other people's emotions, and it's
right.
And that's, again, I think family can be a way, a container for us to learn some of, like, our toughest lessons in life.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day too, it's like, can you love yourself and can you love other people? And
yeah, interestingly, that's what Jesus said.
Yep.
All right.
Well, I do love you.
Love you too, honey. Good job. Good work.
Yeah.
Good conversation.
Yeah. Thanks, y'all. Thanks to everyone who's listening. I don't think we say this enough, but I know myself and Pops over here, we appreciate just you tuning in and giving us your time and attention. Like, you don't know, I don't think you realize how much that means to us.
A lot.
We're doing a lot with planning and strategizing and really trying to figure out where we want to take this podcast. I mean, it's almost going to be November will be a year that we started this.
Yeah, and we really, one thing I like about Darby, she gives us, I've said it before, I love Darby. She gives us really good feedback that's critical and constructive, and we want, you and I have these conversations all the time off camera. It's just, and our
Right.
family does it too. But we want it to matter in your life in terms of just being an encouragement, being something that makes. For me, it's, I just want you to think.
Mhm.
I want to provoke thought in our people that listen, so that they can go take it and apply it in their own life if it makes sense to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah. So again, thanks for the support. Like other ways you can help us is to share the podcast with someone you think might benefit or just enjoy it.
yeah,
Also to comment and like. We're on all the channels. We're on Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok.
yeah,
All those. We're building a Facebook page too,
right.
and we are really wanting to take it to the next level. But that's also, we have to manage life and the flow of all of
And
it
it's
as well.
slow work.
It is. It's very slow
So
work. And so for those of y'all listening, like y'all are with us, like in the slow work. So it is neat to see how this is evolving, and where we still don't really know what's going to happen with it or where it's going to go. But I know I enjoy these talks, and
Same.
it does. It makes me think for sure. So,
Yeah. All right.
all right, love you.
Let me see you later.